questions for Adam? Start with Ira, over to your right.
When you look at the first half of the season, how much do you, the growth you saw over those last 2 or 3 games, how much of that do you have confidence is sustainable versus worrying still about some of the things that showed up in the first couple of games?
Well, I think, it's hard to blanket statement the last 2 weeks versus the first 6 weeks. I think there were moments, throughout the first half of the season that I thought were really good building blocks. Obviously there were some moments that we want to have back. So the bye week gives you a chance to reflect on all that stuff. Not that you don't reflect daily or hourly on all this stuff, but it allows you to put it in an organized fashion to deliver it to the players in a way of saying, this is where we've been, this is where we need to go, these are the things, and then it gives you a chance to rep it without going over an opponent of the things that maybe you can see how people will attack some issues that have happened, So I think it gives us a chance to really do that over the bye week. But, certainly I think our guys, when you're coming off wins, you've got some confidence, but that stuff is only as good as the next play, and we're just trying to focus on what we're trying to get done tomorrow and today.
We'll go with Ira and then Aslan.
When you have guys that are in their first season as starters, like DJ and Kaylin and Sydney, and you might have 1 or 2 others, is that growth? Do you see the growth faster sometimes because of that, just the trial by fire and the fact they've actually played in games now?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. The thing about those guys is, even last year they played. They're just playing more significant roles this year. So your sample size is a lot bigger. But usually when they're playing more reps, because we've seen a lot of sample size out there, and I think it's always just trying to bring it back to that for the players of whether it's mistakes or success that they have out there in the game, out there in the Doak or in away games, is just trying to bring it back to their preparation, their practice, and but I think them playing together is the part that you're building on. It's one thing to go out there and take your individual reps in practice, take your individual reps in games, but when you start to develop a consistent group of 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 players in a unit, and they're on the field together, that's the confidence that we need to continue to breed, because that's real. When you see really good defense around the country, they're guys that are play together, and usually they have history together, and that breeds confidence, because not everything we do is, well, this is this and this is that. There is some of that, but there's some of, okay, if this happens, these are the tools we can use to defend it, making sure all the tools are in unison, they're playing together, and they feel confident playing with each other.
Coach, teams incrementally get better throughout a season, but you guys seemingly have made really huge strides in the middle of a season. Has that happened to you before? And I guess what do you put your finger on when it comes to that?
You quantify, the first half of the season, and I think it's the consistency in the back end of finding some rhythm of who's on the field and who's playing together, and that trickles down. I think we've been pretty consistent up front. There's been some guys in and out of the lineup, but for the most part, there are some guys that were the fifths and now they're the thirds, and they're playing a little bit more, but they were playing. But the front group, the guys that have played the most reps have pretty much been on the field consistently. I think that's a big part of it. Other than one of the halves that Kalen Deloche had a miss, for the most part, he's been a pretty consistent entity too. So I think just the consistency of being healthy and working together is part of the growth you're seeing.
I'll come over here to the left for Jerry.
UMass, can you talk about them a little bit and the mentality of some of those kids that UMass recruits in coming down here? Yeah,
I mean, they're a crew. They're playing a newer quarterback that started early in the year due to some injuries. The back's a big physical back. They've really developed consistency up front. They've pretty much played the same 5 guys throughout the season, which has helped them. They play 3 different tight ends. I think their wideouts, they've kind of rolled through about 5 of them at this point. But just they do a good job in the screen game. They try to stay as balanced as they can with their attack, run and throws. But just finding ways to help that quarterback within the screens, within the run games, some of the angles they use in the run game. And, they do a nice job with who they are and what they're trying to get done offensively. They're coming off one of their better games 2 weeks ago, which they really established the run game. They play with another quarterback that's an athlete that create a lot of explosives for them in the ground game. So, that's a program that they're continuing to build their identity with that new quarterback.
We'll go back to Ira on your right.
DJ specifically, it seems like even when we've been at practice, there have been times where it seems like, I don't know, it just looks like maybe there's less thinking or something. It just seems like he's maybe playing faster. Is that accurate?
Well, it is accurate for the most part, Ira. I thought last week in Carolina he played a little bit slower than he had earlier in the season. And then, Amari played a little bit better in that game. I think DJ is young, but we put a lot on his plate, and I do think you've hit it on the head. You can tell in his play speed early in the game kind of how he's seeing things, how quickly he's pressing, and seeing plays, and so I think DJ is what we're looking for. I mean, he's got good quickness. He's an extremely physical player. He doesn't stay blocked, and he's a good, solid tackler. But I do think we've seen a lot of growth by DJ over the season. But this is an important week for him because I think he can play a lot better than he did the week before.
All right, we'll go back to Adlon, back right.
After the North Carolina game, Jarian said that you guys had kind of singled him out and really challenged him. How often can you do that with a player? Do you have to really kind of pick your spots when you kind of put a spotlight on a kid and really push him in practice? And how satisfying is it when you're able to realize it's a guy like Jarian and push him and then he's able to kind of perform for you?
Yeah, I think that's why you coach. You coach to see growth with your players. Now, players usually measure themselves by how many plays they make. We know it's a lot bigger than that, but obviously that's the positive reinforcement that they want to earn. But try not to make it too complicated with how we push our players. When you see things done right, we celebrate it and try to be as consistent with that. You never get bored of seeing guys do the right thing and have success. You want to continue to push that reinforcement. But when it's not being done to the standard, we need to tell them, and then we need to show them. And if it happens to be 6 negative comments in one series of a practice, then that's what it is. If it happens to be a bunch of positive reinforcement over 2 weeks because he's playing his butt off and he's doing everything right, then that's what that is. And try to not be consistent with the message, but just consistent with why we're giving the message, that it is what it is and we're seeing what it is. Anytime you're a coach and you try to make stuff up a little bit, players see right through that. I think you got to be as real as you can in the moments that it shows, and try to be like that every single day for our players.
All right, we'll go back to Ira.
Coach Norvell seemed to be real high on the way Amari played last time out also. Where has he improved, and what can that do for you guys?
Well, I think, we try to use Amari. Obviously he's playing inside backer, but we use him on the line of scrimmage too as a pass rusher. There's some plays that he wanted to have back. We missed too many sacks 2 weeks ago, and he'll be the first one to tell you that. But he plays with really good effort, and he's a sure tackler. And those things showed up with some effort plays last week. And, listen, Amari's part of, he's a big part of our defense, and it's important that he plays well.
Ira?
Also on the back end, because of different reasons, you guys have had to kind of play some different people the last couple weeks, and it seems like that group's come together pretty well. As other guys come back from injuries or whatever, how do you balance, tinkering with what's working versus, giving those guys opportunities to get back out there who were playing earlier?
Yeah, it's going to show up out there, and the guys that are playing the best and practicing the best and preparing the best and they got the best team approach, they're the ones that are going to play. And, is that based more off of games and more off of practice? It's based more off of practice because we practice more than we play. And so that'll always be the kind of the way we judge playing time. But then at the end of the day, when the ball gets kicked off on Saturdays, they got to go make their plays. But, I think we have seen some growth on the back end. I think part of it's because they just made a decision to play better with better technique and more consistency. but I do believe in the consistency of that group, and putting the 5 or 6 or 4 guys on the field at the same time based on the groupings and letting them play with each other, because that's important for leverages, to know where each other's going to be, and so I don't see that changing.
All right, last one will be Jerry over here to your left.
Following up on that, just to take that a step farther. Continuity in that secondary. A secondary that plays together develops a feel for each other. How important is that in today's football, where a lot of it is a spread offense you're facing?
Yeah, I mean, I've been preaching that since day one. You want to develop, I'm not saying that we're going to have just 5 guys that play 70 snaps, but, I don't think that's a bad thing either. You want to reward the guys that prepare, practice the right way, and have the requisite skill set to go make plays for you on Saturday. And within that, there's a lot of communication, there's a lot of leverage feel that you got to play off each other, and there's tools out there that they have to be on the same page of when they're going to use those tools, how they're going to play it, how they're going to deliver routes to each other, how they're going to match routes together. And so I think when you involve a lot of people in those conversations, it's hard to develop consistency. It's not impossible, but it's hard. And so I think part of the growth has been us kind of cutting down the roles of guys and being a little bit more specific with how we're using people. And I think we've started to see some growth with that.
All right, thank you, Coach.
Thanks, guys.